What's good with YouTube? You already know, Big Flocka with the convict's perspective, and I'm gonna smash, dash, slide on through with a little bit of energy. Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, do all those things to help support this channel, and hit that bell notification for future fire content. So, the ATF was involved, right? Seattle Field Division of the FBI, the Yakima Police Department, Police Chief, Yakima County Sheriff, the DEA, Assistant Special Agent in charge, as well as Homeland Security in the investigation of what was going on in Yakima, Washington, as well as in state prisons and federal prisons. This is an indictment against Nuestra Familia associates and even members, okay? And this goes into a lot of different charges that are being charged against many people that are on the streets, prison, and even the feds. Now, there's one individual that I know personally that's from Salinas that was mentioned in this indictment, and that was Robert Bubba Hanrahan de Salas. So apparently Bubba's being indicted again. And Bubba he was pretty close to coming home from my understanding, man. So let's get to it though. Now, apparently they have charges in this RICO case, right? Which is going to be a RICO case, a racketeering, such as retaliation, threats against federal witnesses, tampering with federal witnesses, to moving distribution of products, to communications with facilities, to all different things, man, to even rooster fights. They hit two different locations in Washington that were known to have roosters that were connected to the NF. So basically, these were new operations that were going on in Washington. This was a regiment that had been finally established after years of putting the pieces together. It finally gets put together, and next thing you know, it gets torn down. This is common of regiments, man. And so those in Washington that decide to continue to function, this is going to be a continuous trend, because now that they know that there's operations going on that are under the NF Bandera, they're going to be on you guys as much as they can be. 37 firearms were found, thousands of rounds of ammunition, okay, pounds of quantities of cocaine and methamphetamine, as well as 8,000 fentanyl-laced pills. Additionally, law enforcement team seized more than 20,000 in cash. Also seized hundreds of roosters from locations in Zillas and Outlook, Washington. The roosters were allegedly used in cockfights. This was a joint investigation which kind of started off with the ATF, and I think that had a lot to do with the firearms. Now, there was a few females that were charged with money laundering. And what normally that means, right? And this is for people who want to know a little bit about money laundering. I've seen state and federal cases of money laundering, and there's different degrees to it. A lot of times what it is that there's monies that are being held that they feel are contributed to illegal activities in more than the amount of $10,000. Now, there's other names who are currently being looked for, and their names won't be revealed until they are caught, that are under seal until they get indicted as far as they get arrested. So, yeah, man, this is a pretty big indictment, man. Some of the details are kind of a little bit vague. But, you know, like I said, it seemed like the Washington regiment, from what I'm looking at, wasn't doing anything too big, but they were starting to get it. It's like they started to get momentum. It seemed like the first dudes that started to come out there to the streets to establish regiments was around 2000 and I think 12 or 13. They came out with that pack. They had an explanation for every soldado, what to do out there in the streets, and how to establish regiments, and therefore how to get in contact with leadership. So over time, more and more people have been educated, more and more people have stepped out. Some people that came out originally to push those the bylaws out there for all the Northerners and Norteños to fall under the NF Bandera, a lot of those guys ended up catching more time, either fairly or state. So now all that stuff is slowly now being put into place over the last few years. Money's being generated. There's regiments all over the place. And see, what people don't realize, a regiment doesn't have to be a position of where people are all out there on Front Street and they're running the city and territory. Those type of regiments a lot of times get put out there on Front Street, they get exploited, and pretty much everybody gets brought down. That's the problem that was going on out there in San Jose, Salinas, and other areas, is that people are putting themselves out there on Front Street. Now, the whole objective of a regiment is to basically generate money, run that territory as well as you can without putting yourself on Front Street. Now, there's three problems that always happen with regiments. One, either someone ends up deciding to tell that was too involved, right? And gives up all the details, okay? But a lot of times you got to realize, is that someone who is looking at time, or is that someone that somebody was mistreating, and how much do they know? Now, the other thing that happens, right, is this: people involve their women or other people, and they will start to act like they're somebody, like they're some type of individual with status and rank, and like a mob figure out there in the streets. And people look at them in awe. Then they start to speak on them. Information gets out there. People want to work with them. They end up working with the wrong people, and those people wanting to get caught up, they're real quick to point the fingers. Now the last thing is this: is that people have a tendency to put themselves out there on Front Street, sometimes where it's not necessary. Okay, they'll go get at some regular small time baller and tell him that he has to kick into the NF and this and that, and next thing you know, dude's like barely making any money. It's like, why are you going after this dude? You know what I'm saying? Why don't you go after someone who's much bigger? You know, the ones that are bringing in the product, the ones that are looking for protection. So there's different angles to this, you know, and people get too greedy, and that's been the downfall of regiments since the NF started establishing these regiments. Either they get too greedy or they get too violent. They start making bad examples, and those bad examples only bring law enforcement attention. And when too much information is known by too many people about what's going on, who's holding status, who's doing what, it never ends good, man. And so, you know, this was a work in progress, right? Washington, you know, Utah, those are probably the two states that have a long, extensive history of having North Annuals. They've had mixed reactions to the regiments that they established in the 80s and 90s. A lot of them died away. They had no direction, and that's how the big dogs came about. Since around 2008-9, right, they started to get back in line, and the mandate started to come out 2012, 2013, and different packets about how they're supposed to function. And so it was a long time building these regiments. It just doesn't build overnight like people think. It takes time, and a lot of people were going to learn through trial and error. There are a few C's now from Washington and Nevada, and I believe Utah as well. You know, there's a lot of other states that have a lot of individuals that are there representing the people, and regiments are popping up everywhere. You know, I'm seeing in different areas in Arizona and New Mexico, there's North Annuals out there, you know, doing their thing. And with that, regiments are going to slowly start to be established. It's just in some areas you may have to be incognito. You got to worry about the local gangs, the local prison organizations, and you don't want to expose your hand what you're doing. You know, a lot of people don't realize that once there's certain people who are given the opportunity to have leadership roles, man, it's what they've always wanted. Then once they get there, they don't know what to do with it. They start acting like John Gotti, and they start to overstep their boundaries. Now, in this indictment, I noticed there was a few females, like I said earlier, that were caught for laundering money. That's going to be interesting to see how they hold their mug. You know, there's different types of ways that money's been laundered, you know, through all kinds of different organizations. Now that you have all kinds of, like, you know, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, Green Dot, you have all kinds of different ways, man. So it's a lot easier. So I think it's going to be a lot harder for the federal government to connect the dots when it comes to money laundering, unless people got sloppy. And that happens from time to time. Now, it does mention that this regiment was being given directions that were coming from AdMax, from Colorado. The only one from California, like I said, that was indicted, man, was Bubba from Salinas, which was kind of interesting because his alleged ranking, you know what I'm saying? With that said, though, man, I'll tap in when I get a little bit more information. There's been a lot of different rumors that have been going on about Washington right now, and I don't want to speak on too much, but there's definitely a lot of activity going on with the NF out there and the North Annuals. With that said, it's your boy Flacco. I'm gone.